This is Rhea, and this is Just the Who of Us, where we talk about a range of topics, including life events, current events, spirituality, entertainment, family relationships, as well as answering listener questions and more. Last time you were here, we focused on kind of getting to know you a little bit and your writing journey. And today we want to focus a little bit more on continuing life.
hmm
Um, it's funny because the conversation just before this, we were talking about different stages of emotional development in relation to ADHD and
hmm
anxiety and things like that, your mental health. What we actually were discussing the latter two. So you've got 40 to I think 65 and the 65 on. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting because my next conversation is with someone about later stage in life or where you kind of don't want to become stagnant and how do I continue to be productive and all these things. And the stages that we were discussing were from 40 on, and 40, you kind of it emotionally makes sense as to why we have these quote unquote midlife crises, because this emotional stage that we're in now, we're starting to kind of reflect. And both 40 and 65 we're kind of starting to reflect. And some of that around 40 is, well, what could I have done differently?
Yeah.
um who am I to the world around me? What have I put in? What am I going to be remembered as, and things like that. So I just thought that was a really interesting
Yeah.
correlation. So I just turned 40 um this May, and
hmm
so for me there's been a lot of external and internal factors, in the sense of I struggled really heavily with emotional control last year. And so this will be 39 heading into 40 last holiday season, between like October and December really. And this was, I knew I was turning 40 was part of it. you know. Um I had a lot of changes between last October and like this March. And also confirming, which I already knew, but confirming that I am perimenopausal. That messes with your emotions as well. That dysregulation going on in your body, your hormonal changes. um, and so I know that specifically for women, when we go through these kind of emotional stages in our life, it can be, I don't know that I want to say difficult, but it can be challenging to kind of keep up with our own standards, standards of society, standards of our health, standards of our productivity, all these things that, while they exist when you're younger, but the older you get, they kind of rear their heads a little bit more, so to say. And that is coupled with emotional changes, physical changes, societal changes. There's things that, when we're in our 20s, we tell ourselves, oh, I'm never going to be the mom that my kids have to explain things to me. I'm, I'm always going to be cool. I'm always going to understand it. And one of my daughter's friends explained a word to me the other day, and I was like, oh shit, I really am 40. I don't even know what this means anymore.
Yeah.
But things change so much from year to year, 10 years, 20 years, that like it's just inevitable.
Yeah.
So all the things that you're currently 20s telling yourself that I'm never gonna go through that, you're gonna go through it.
Right. Right.
Um,
I would agree.
and it's just part of life. It's just, it happens. So um I want to talk about kind of that process for you, and the kind of focus and goal that you have to live a life to be an influence to
Mhm.
others around you, but yourself as well,
Right.
to gracefully and successfully navigate through this phase, this stage of your life.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, I can
Mhm.
talk about that. I'm an expert. I'm living it. Right. So, so for the record, in December I will be 77. So I consider that a good life lived. I often hear in the different communities women in there who've turned 50 or women who are 55 speaking of themselves as elders or crones if you're in more of a alternative spiritual community. And it just sets me kind of on edge in that sense. It's like, well, you really aren't an elder. I really, and these are my opinions. This is from my place, so it can mean everything. It can mean nothing. It doesn't matter. I'm going to say it anyway. Personally, I don't feel, looking even at my life, that I even began to enter into that phase of being an elder until I was maybe 69, 70 years old. And what a blessing if we can live clear into our 80s, because I do feel that this wise woman, wise elder that is missing in our culture, missing in our society and our communities, has to have lived. This is generalizing, but I think pretty specific, that we have to have lived well into our 70s and hopefully into our 80s before we come to a place where there's a deep rooted wisdom that comes truly from experience. And so my intention and I wouldn't say goal, my intention on a daily basis, just waking up in the morning, is what can I do to stay vital and alive and current, and at the same time respecting the fact that I'm not young. And rarely do people want to talk about these things, that we're in the dying process. I say that those of us in the, elders, we're in the rot process. We're in the phase where if I'm the apple, and I haven't been picked from the tree, I'm going to fall off the tree and onto the ground and begin the process of decay, because that's the cycle of return. And
Mm,
there is beauty in that, and there is wisdom in that, and there's ending in that. And that it's necessary for us to speak about these cycles and speak about the beginnings and the endings, so that we respect and value that one cannot exist without the other, and that one
yeah.
is not better than the other. And yes, I would say, oh, I'd love to be a teenager again because I could do this and I could do that. However, that's not really true, because you love to have the feeling of youthfulness and cavalierly think nothing can happen to you. But there's so many things you look back on, and instead of regretting them, just to say there was no way for me to know different because I hadn't lived long enough.
Yeah,
And
that
so
is a really profound statement. Absolutely.
and rather than with regret, we you can speculate, look back and say, well, I should have, or I didn't, with these kind of like nostalgic regret, nostalgic regret in your voice.
Yeah.
But if you really tell the truth about it, you have no idea what your life would have looked like had you chosen something else. Because
It's so
there's
true.
so many if I had chosen not to have a baby, if I'd chosen not to marry that person, if I'd gone to that school or driven that car, it doesn't matter, because
Yeah.
that's creating a story, but it's a story that's made up based upon what you believe or hope or think would have happened. But the truth is you don't know. And what you do have, and this I think is what comes with the wisdom of age, is what you do have is this beautiful life that you've lived already, and you can look back and say, I made this choice and this is what happened. Because I don't know what would have happened had I chose something different.
Right.
So I'm a woman who married as a teenager. I had three children by the time I was 25 years old. So when I turned 40, I had a 20-year-old child. Now that's a very different
Yep.
story than I have a daughter who had a child when she turned 40.
Yeah.
So my daughter's 53 now. She has a teenager. When I was 53, my kids were in their 30s.
Right. Right.
So it's just looking at life differently because we have perhaps fewer children than many of our families did in the past. Many women are choosing to have children later in life.
Yeah.
And what is it like to be a mother, a 19-year-old mother, 20-year-old mother with a brand new baby, or maybe even two babies, two kids? And how does that feel compared to being 40 and having a baby?
Yeah. Yeah. So my husband doesn't have any biological children. So we adopted a child together, and he has, as he gets closer to 40, he's, oh, I would still like to have a biological child and things like that. And I'm like, I don't want to. I was a mother at 14. I don't want to be a mother at 40. Like, that's just,
Yeah.
now, had I not had a baby at 14, maybe I would at 40, but for me, I don't, that's just not something I would like to do. Now, we've had conversations about other ways that that could be possible for him, but for me, I just would not like to. um,
Well, right. And
yeah,
you can say, oh, if I didn't have the baby at 14, I'd want to have a baby at 40, but you don't really know.
that's true. That's
So,
very true. I
so
still might not have wanted a baby at 40.
and this for me is also the wisdom that comes with age, and sometimes not quite as old as I am, but to stand in the center of your life. And that's one of the teachings that I use even in my book, The Lost Teachings, is that always step into the center of your own life every single day, kind of stand there and say, who am I right now? What do I know to be true? And then
Yeah,
it eliminates this speculative, well, if I did that or I should have done that. You just stand every morning and say, who am I? What time is it in my life? What do I need today? Because this is really a way to stay present, and the choices and decisions we make now, yes, they're based upon things that have happened to us. But
yeah,
we make a choice today, it's going to affect today and it will affect tomorrow. But tomorrow we have to stand in the center again and say, oh, yesterday I chose not to go to the grocery store. I mean, you can use just simple things. Well, I needed to buy food, but I chose not to go. There could be
right.
100 reasons why not. And now this morning I'm standing here saying, oh, I am affected by that I didn't go get cream for my coffee
Yeah,
or potatoes to boil for dinner. But that's already finished. So today, here I am without cream for my coffee and without potatoes for dinner. What am I going to do? And it's not about not planning. It's not about just floating along in life with being irresponsible and not accountable. It's about moment by moment checking in with yourself and saying, well, I did have a baby at 14. And I
hmm,
do have an amazing child, and I have an amazing life. And here I am with a child that was born when I was 14. And what do I do today?
right.
And today
Yeah,
you stood with your husband, and I mean, I'm assuming like today you stand and say to him, well, at the age I am today, I don't choose to have another child.
yeah,
There's nothing monumentally, you don't need to analyze that even. It doesn't
right.
matter why that choice is there. This is what is necessary for me today to stand centered and to be the best I can be with who I am and what I have.
Absolutely.
And so another thing that I see that I've observed, and I write about that in the book, the coming book, The Women of the Always. There's a chapter where I even address it, that we see today a lot of people who seek, well, let's just go with like facelifts, women who want to have facelifts.
Hmm.
James Hillman, I believe, in one of his books, he was an archetypal psychologist. He wrote about the fact that, or he even said that facelifts should be illegal from that perspective of that our face is how we appear to the world in general. I mean, yes, our people see our bodies, but our face is what is forward. And that so often we see someone's face and we can't trust it. We can't trust it because it is not in alignment with the age of their body, and it's
Yeah.
in alignment with the life that they've lived. And that there's a and yes, I mean some people have things done for cosmetic reasons that enhance something. Maybe their droopy eyes, they can't see well, so they
Right.
need an eyelid tuck or whatever.
Yeah.
Not criticizing or saying somebody should or shouldn't. I'm just making
Right.
an observation. How many times have you seen someone that their face looks one age and artificially that age, but they've got an old neck?
Right. Right.
You got
Yes.
a 70-year-old neck and you have a 40-year-old face. There's an incongruency here. And then there's also this presentation of can we live, where does this beauty standard adversely affect the way that we present ourselves to the world as an elder?
Yeah.
And that the story, the story of my life is written on my body, it's written on my face. Every wrinkle or every scar or every gray hair or whatever tells a story, is part of the story of the aging. And going back to that process in nature, things, we don't reach maturity and then just stay there. Like when something
Right.
gets, oh, the tomatoes ripe, but there's only that moment where you've gained that, and then you're in the process, just as you from birth were in the process of growing to maturity. After that point, you're aging into death.
Right.
And how is it possible? We have to accept the inevitability of the ending of the cycle of the physical body. It's like let's not, folks, let's not pretend that this doesn't happen.
Right.
And,
Right.
and that you're
Yeah.
buying anti-aging creams when you're 50 years old.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what well, not a lot of times. The truth is you get what you get. You have a body that was given to you because your mom and dad came together and had a baby, and that's dependent upon her genetics, his genetics, diet,
Right.
where they lived, all of that.
Yeah.
And I look in the mirror and I have like wrinkles at the edges of my mouth, and I look in the mirror and that's my paternal grandfather. I have this aging, I mean, pictures of him as an old man. It's like, okay, I got this, not because I didn't smile enough or I slept on my side instead of my back. No, that's a genetic thing that's part of who I am. And could I change it because I, did face exercises or I mean, whatever people do. But the point is there, that's the imprint of the character that I am.
Right. Yeah.
And it's finding a balance. It's finding a way to grow into the end of your life and to be content. Not that you don't take care of your health or you indifferent about. I mean, doesn't none of that stuff really matters because you can be obsessed with green drinks and jogging and being at the gym and drop dead on your jog when you're 50 years old.
Right.
Then
Absolutely. Yeah.
somebody like my grandfather who drank whiskey all his life and ate pork fat and lived into his 90s, it doesn't make any sense. So
Right.
I think I'll start drinking and smoking. So the thing is back to the stand in the center every day. Stand in the center every day and ask yourself, how do I feel? I didn't eat properly yesterday. I ate a bunch of sugar and I drank
Hmm.
late at night, or I smoked too many cigarettes, and today I don't feel well.
Yeah.
And that's not whether I'm 40 or 80. Just
Right.
check in with yourself and say, what perhaps could I do today differently? Not because I'm trying to look young, but I'd like
Right.
to feel as well as I can so that I can continue the work that I want to do. And I'm at this age also, and that may not be true. I mean, some people my age have lots and lots of health problems.
Right.
Um, and I have my share. I even have a pacemaker that helps keep my heart on track. But I I'm at the age where it's like there are so many things happening in the world, so many changes, so much that's interesting. Rather than
Mhm.
looking at it as catastrophe, be in awe and wonder. It's like, whoa, things are happening so quickly. I wish that I wish for myself to live a little longer so that I can continue to participate and observe and perhaps share something along the way that makes a difference in the life of my grandson, my 13-year-old grandson that, we have so many things we can share. And
Yeah.
he'll come and he'll sit with me with the computer because these kids, it's like they're born knowing some of this stuff.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah.
and then he'll sit with me and he'll say, Grandma, did you know you could do this? I mean, he'll show me something on the computer from the place of he knows something that I don't.
Yeah.
And and then I'll use a example that happened a couple months ago with when I was with him. He's old enough now he can ride in the front seat of the car. That used to not be a problem back in the olden days, but he got tall enough, big enough to sit in the front seat with us.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I was driving my daughter's car. We were going to go to the store, I think, and I said, "Jump in the car, you can ride shotgun." Now, I'm from a family that comes out of Texas and Oklahoma, and so that's an expression I heard growing up. And he's like, That's stupid. What do you mean, Grandma?" So I had this great conversation with him. I said, "Well, imagine people having a stagecoach or a wagon. They've got a team of horses. There may be robbers on the road. There may be all sorts of things happening. And so I'm driving the horses. I'm in charge of the horses. You're sitting next to me, riding shotgun. You've got the shotgun in case there's some kind of, danger. A bear runs out in front of us. Whatever. I mean, I'm telling this story."
Yeah.
And he was so intrigued with that information. Not that well, yeah, it is irrelevant, but it also speaks to a different way of life.
Right.
And that it's
Yeah.
okay to have that story because we still have that in our language. We still have the Teamsters Union. Think about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teamsters, where did that word come from? From a team of horses. But the guys that are part of the Teamsters Union aren't driving six white horses, right? But we still say horsepower for our
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
So that's not really irrelevant. It's not unimportant. It gives us the story of the development of our language, the way we express things, how we live. These are the things I think that sometimes we forget about, that the elders can give to us, that gives us a foundational piece
I
of
love that.
who we are.
Yeah.
That
That
is ahead.
I think that a lot of times we forget that we're older in a sense of like, well, my 10-year-old wasn't around 30 years ago, to know something I would know from then, or 20 years ago, or 15. He might not know about certain things that my 25-year-old was already alive to experience, like
Yes.
9/11. I was actually in high school. My son was at daycare. Um, my 10-year-old only knows of that of like, if he even really knows about it, he would just know from what he's heard, probably related to history class or something like that. But my 25-year-old was actually alive for it. He was very small, but he was
Mhm.
still alive for it.
Yeah.
And so I think just in general, we we forget
Mhm.
that they haven't experienced certain things that we have. And it is really cool to like tell them stories that, sometimes, most of the time, kids want to learn. They want to know things. And I think that's a really good thing to point out because I think sometimes very oftentimes really we forget that they weren't here to experience some of the things we were here to experience and otherwise might not even know about it.
Yeah. And to keep the connections because it's not, life urgent that you know what riding shotgun means. But I do believe that when we have these bits and pieces, if you go to the airport and you go through the TSA and all of that check, to be able to say to someone, this, when I flew when I was younger, this didn't happen. And the reason that this is here is because of this world event,
Yeah. Yeah.
because of how things unfolded around airports and flying and so on. And
Yeah.
that's why today, when we go through, to get to the gate, that we go through this checking. And that's whether, somebody might not agree with it. They might think it's unimportant, or they're angry that there's too much control or invasiveness, but it's still a part of the story, and
Absolutely.
life is about story. A young man, just the other day, he's the son of a person I know, and he's probably about 14, I think, and does a lot of stuff online and has online communities and often gets criticized, you're on the screen too much. And his comment was, not that many years ago, it was considered that reading was dangerous. A couple
Hmm.
hundred years ago, that it was dangerous to read books,
Yeah.
and that was criticized, and we were kept away from it. And how is that different? Am I in the, experiencing online and artificial intelligence and all the things that we may criticize or push against? But can we think of the fact that there were also times in history when there were people who were afraid to have electricity in their house?
Right.
There were people
Yeah.
who held out, oh no, this is dangerous. We're going to keep with our candles and our gas lamps. And that's also what you mentioned at the beginning, is that how can we keep up with what's happening
Right.
and still keep the stories? And I know some people say, oh no, I won't have a cell phone, or I don't use, old people. It's like, I've never used a cell phone. I never use it. It's like, well, they're tools. That's all. It's just a
Right.
tool.
Yeah.
And that they're in service to us. We don't want to become enslaved to them, but they can be in service to us if we learn how to use them. And that also, I think, is the wisdom of age, in the sense that if you're growing old and you become more and more stubborn and more stiff and unbendable, and you're not willing to move, you just live in the old story. Well, back in my day, this is what happened. That's out of balance. There's an imbalance that happens, that if there isn't a way for you to acknowledge and at least participate, turn the lights on in your house if you have electricity. And if you choose to have a candle, choose it because you want to have the candle, not because you're afraid of the electricity.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I actually, so this session is about to cut off. Do you mind going out, hopping back in?
I don't mind at all.
Okay.
Hello again.
Hi.
That works.
Um,
That has something to do with your Zoom subscription, right? As to how long.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't I don't pay for the subscription, so it only lets me do like 40-minute meetings at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Every dollar counts. Keep it. Buy something. Buy some potatoes
Absolutely.
and half right today for tomorrow. So,
Exactly, exactly.
um, I'm trying to think about. Well, also, I'm going to backtrack a little bit about
Okay.
being what I call an old woman. And being in that place, I also, some of these things, because I travel a lot, I'm out in the public, I do a lot of work with teaching and consulting and writing and creativity. And so I often hear, uh, particularly women, express the fact, well, I'm old and I'm invisible. I feel invisible and or irrelevant.
Yeah.
You might have heard that yourself. And I hear that, but I also wonder at some point, is that happening because as we shrink into ourselves and we get older and smaller and more insular, that there's no way for anybody to see us? And we're so conditioned to kind of like not speak up or not to be offensive or not to be in the way. And I have observed, even in the last like 5 years, because I do look like an older woman. I do look like an elder. I travel with my suitcases and my carry-on almost with, I mean, really, I would probably 100% of the time, if I get on the plane, a young man or even a man in his 50s type of thing will ask me, "Can I put your suitcase up for you? Can I lift that up the stairs for you?"
Yeah.
And so I don't experience that invisibility. And
Yeah,
I
it's more
and
of
I
like a
always
willingness
say
to help.
I always say yes, because even if I can lift it up, even if
Right.
I'm capable, to me it's the reinforcement of the willingness of a younger person to acknowledge and respectfully. I don't feel
Right.
like it's like, oh, they think you're incapable. I always feel I'm seen. I'm actually seen in this instance, so that this person is offered to help me do something.
Yeah. 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 It that's always so like it's always nice to see because it's that respectful aspect of the world that oftentimes gets lost. And
Hmm.
it's really easy to acknowledge the negative things
Yeah.
about the world. So it's really refreshing to be reminded of the world really does have a lot of respectful people that still exist, a lot of respectful and patient and kind. There is still a large portion of that in the world.
Well, there really is, and there is so much focus on the negativity and or
Hmm.
the differences, and in a moment like that, if a younger person offers to put my suitcase in the overhead bin, it doesn't really matter to me what their politics are or what their religion is.
Right.
We're so like, no, I don't like the
Protecting.
baseball cap you're wearing, so no, you can't lift up my suitcase. I mean, this is the kind of thing we're conditioned to react to or
Yeah.
respond to,
Yeah.
rather than in this moment, this particular person has connected with me in a way that I am seen and offers to do something. And
Yeah. Yeah.
very,
Yeah. My husband and I were at the shooting range a while back, and there was a man there with a particular hat on, and you know, I- at first glance, I'm like, and this is me wrongfully judging, um, but at
oh,
first
you do
glance,
that?
just kidding, I didn't say that. Oh, at first glance, I'm like, oh. I already don't like this guy, right? And so we're at the shooting range. My husband is black. This man is a older white man. He has a younger I guess his grandson with him. And here we are. And all of a sudden the man with the special hat comes over to my husband. Now automatically I'm thinking like, oh God, what's about to happen? Again, me being judgy. And he's like, hey man, uh would you like to like try this gun out? He's like, uh, oh, I think my husband was kind of watching because the younger guy was shooting it. It was a rather large gun. He was
Mhm.
watching him. He was like, man, like he is doing like really well with that. And so I guess like he noticed him looking and he's like, hey, you want to shoot this gun? And we were like, oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Didn't expect that to be the interaction. Now that is just me being judgy. It's also things that my husband has told me about his own life experience with certain people. And so to me, which he also does the opposite of. He also tells me all the time about positive situations with, people that he has. But, you know, being a black man, he has there's certain experiences that he has that I'm not going to have. And
Right.
so then me hearing these stories and then me also seeing things in my own life, I just automatically associate these two things with, oh, this is probably going to be a negative interaction. Completely wrong. we had the best conversation with this man and his grandson, and it was wonderful. Like, didn't know us at all, and was like, "Hey, man, like I see you, like looking at, noticing this, and would you like to try it out?" It was a completely wonderful experience, but because of, politics and things, I completely misjudged the situation. And it also was it was pretty cool too, because to see this young man out here practicing shooting, bonding, and spending that time with his grandfather was really, really cool as well. My grandma, my father's father passed away years ago, and my mother's mom, she passed away last year, and she was 97. And so, you know, her mobility has been limited for some years. So, like, there's things that things and memories that like my 25 and 22-year olds have with my both my parents' mothers, that like my 10-year-old has never met my father's mother, and my 16-year-old was very small, when she passed. So the memories are very different. And then, one child that doesn't even know her.
Mhm.
And then with my mom's mom, my 10-year-old has a very different memory. For the last 10 years of his life, she's been less and less mobile with my mom's mom, as to where my 25-year-old, he has tons of memories with my
Mhm.
mom's mom, and so it was just, I think this young man was like maybe late teens, and he's at the range with his grandpa. And it was
Mhm.
really, really cool to see, because a lot of people don't have that. And a
Right.
lot of people, if they do have it, they don't take advantage of it,
Yeah.
and so it was a really, all around, a really nice
Yeah.
moment.
Well, and just if you just take what you're just talking about, there could be half the population listening to this going, "Oh, I'm never going to listen to her again because
Yeah.
she has a gun."
Right, right. Yeah.
And that opens up this whole other thing about people's opinions and people's attitudes and what you should or shouldn't do rather than
Yeah.
looking at that's a choice that's the way we choose to live our life. And
Yeah.
we had a wonderful, amazing experience with another person that was
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
older person engaging with a child or a grandchild or a great grandchild
Yeah.
in a bonding way in a situation about a way of life that there are many people who live that. I grew up around
Yeah.
guns. That was, my grandmother had a little ranch. We always were deer hunting. This was part of life, and
Yeah.
um, somebody else is going to be appalled that you eat meat. You know,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
think that this is also how we get stirred up into situations where we become positional with each other rather than looking at the life experience and the choices. And you can kill people driving your car down a busy street. We've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
stabbing people with knives and that
Right.
we should ban cars and we should ban knives,
Yeah.
and we should ban the internet, whatever, which goes back to it's about people, choices that people make. And you can say, well, this was influenced and that was influenced. But I will share briefly a story. My mother is, of course, I'm so old, my mother's dead. But my mother had three brothers, and they lived on a small ranch where they raised cattle. Had a big barn with a big hay hook, and the rope down where you pulled the hay up. And as young kids, my mother's older brother, Walter, said he wanted to die because he was the oldest and he was going to die and come back and tell them what it was like.
Oh.
So the way that they orchestrated this was that they were going to hang him with the rope from the hay pulley that comes out of the barn.
Hmm.
That now three little kids and the oldest, the fourth one, with the rope around his neck. Grandma's at working in the vegetable garden, And her story was she turned because she heard the kids kind of yelling or whatever and looked to see her oldest son going up with a rope around his neck
Oh my gosh.
in the corral. And when she screamed, the three little ones let go of the rope and he fell to the ground and broke his arm. But he didn't die. And the
Right.
reason I'm sharing that story is this was like in the 1920s, maybe
Hmm.
1930s. They were not influenced by TV. They hadn't been on the internet.
Right.
We're probably not reading penny dreadful novels about,
Right.
hanging people, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But here were four kids that orchestrated a plan that basically could have killed one of them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't coming from the violence and it wasn't coming from the media. It was just coming from life experience.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to blame, like we're having all of this problem, we're having that problem because, and then pick something to blame. But if you look the bigger story, there's that kind of stuff happened, and we just get to know about millions of those instances because we have news and internet and radio and all of that stuff that our
Yeah.
phones. We're being fed, oh, four kids decide to hang somebody in the corral near
Right.
the
Right.
barn. So I also think that this is where, we can chuckle about it and also come back to it's day to day with the choices you make and how you live with each other and um what time you spend with your children, all of those things. But then that as a mother, they still make their own choices. You can be the best mom in the whole
Absolutely.
worst mom in the whole world,
Yeah.
and your children are already at birth. They already have this innate personality or energy about who they are. You can guide and direct them, but at some point they make their own choices.
Wow, first of all, but it's interesting you say that, and I know we've briefly touched on this previously, but my major focus in life is currently accepting the things that I can't change, right? And that's literally anything in the past because you can't go back in time. And so not having the ability to change things really puts into perspective the things that you can control about your own future and how, taking this information that I have now, how can I apply it to making better choices currently or in the future so that, I don't kind of repeat the choices that I wish that I could change so much.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if I want to say it probably is an age factor. It's, age factor coupled with, well, my kids are getting older. And so I only have one relatively little kid in the house. I mean, my youngest is 10. So, like, I have parented, I'm now parenting adults and young adults. And so that's completely different. That's a
Mhm.
whole, like, okay, I have less control than I even used to,
Or
on
that you thought you had
that
before.
I thought I had, right?
Yeah.
And then you get older. And luckily it's not been anything like big and crazy. Like nobody's committed murder or grand larceny or anything crazy like that. But then you get older, they tell you about things and you're like, oh, well, shit. I didn't know that happened, or, like, but then they're also telling you like what they learned from it and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, well, I didn't even control then as much as I thought I did. You know what I mean? Like,
And that's perhaps also as you age is that place of just being in awe. And my, unsolicited advice, but my observation is the more often that we can be accessible to each other, so that
yeah,
I just say that to your child. I'm sure you're going to do things. I'm sure you're doing things that I may not choose for you, but you can always come and talk to me.
yeah,
And I think we need that with each other. We need that in relationship. I have several very close, dear friends. We do not see eye to eye on lots of things, and yet we're friends and we have each other's back.
Yeah.
And this I also feel as elder wisdom to share is that to learn to develop a bigger place, not that we compromise ourselves. It's like, well, I wouldn't go in that direction. Well, so be it. Nobody's asking you to do that. But can you make a container big enough to hold a space for other people's ways and choices and ideologies and still hold the circle?
Yeah.
And that this is also then um to I would also say as a older person, I'm much more willing to say things that other the politically correct, or people are going to get shocked or something that you say something, but I think these observations of wisdom need to be brought out. I recently shared something about, let's like, there was a whole bunch of news about people getting bitten by sharks, like,
Yeah.
elaborate on that. Okay. So as a wisdom keeper, and just to speak to someone and say, okay, the ocean is not your home. You don't live in the ocean. It's not your home. It's
Yeah.
the home to the dolphins and the whales and the fish and the sharks. And you didn't ask permission to go in the ocean. This is also about being more animistic. It's like you actually went into somebody else's space. Now,
Mhm.
the truth about a shark is a shark kills in order to live. That's the
Yeah.
nature of a shark. A shark kills things, eats them. That's how it lives. That's a shark. A shark is a shark. You went into the shark's home without permission. You thought you just had all the right to be there, to enjoy the water, to be swimming, la la la, all the things that people do. But you can't then be shocked or horrified by the fact that a shark bit you. It might be unfortunate. You might have lost your leg. Maybe you died, bled to death. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that you're in somebody else's or something else's space, and that thing is a thing that kills in order to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that then in that you give up the right, I think, you give up the right to be horrified that a shark bit you. And then you want to blame somebody. It's like, well, the lifeguards weren't watching, and the Coast Guard didn't have a net, and there wasn't a siren that went off to tell me that there was a shark in the water. Well, honey, if you go in the water where sharks live, don't be surprised if there's a shark.
That's that whole natural consequences thing, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, you can take it right now. I live near, not too far away from Mount Rainier. I mean, also Mount St. Helens. They're volcanoes. Mount
Hmm.
Rainier's having a lot of little earthquakes all the time right now. Mount Rainier has some smoke coming out of the top. Its sister mountain, St. Helens, a few decades ago erupted. There are millions of people that live at the base of Mount Rainier. It's the city of Seattle. Now, if you got your house at the base of a mountain, that's a volcano that's rumbling, and your house gets covered in ash or you die in the eruption, maybe that's tragic, maybe that's sad, but guess what? You could have moved.
Yeah.
It's pretty inevitable I would say pretty inevitable that mountain's going to erupt. And when it does, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be destructive.
Yeah. But that's also that whole, like, my daughter made a comment to me at like age 18, right? I said, well, this could happen if you do this. She was like, well, it also could not happen. Like, there's always a chance that it
Mhm.
won't happen that way.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's very true. And in some ways, her saying that as an 18-year-old, I was like, oh, you're an idiot teenager. But at the same time, I also kind of admire the that perspective, at the same time. But it is kind of like it's a more risky way to look at things. And I was like, look, not with common sense things. Like certain things, like you said, it might not happen right away, but it is inevitable.
And
And
it increase certain things
probably pay attention
increase
to that.
the element of the risk.
Yes,
But that
absolutely.
doesn't mean I'm never going to go in the ocean. It doesn't mean
Right,
I'm never going to drive a car because I could get in a car accident.
right.
All of that kind of that there's an accountability,
Yes.
responsibility. There's some people in life who are just bigger risk takers.
Yeah,
And that it could happen and it couldn't happen. There's some people who die in a car accident because they had their seatbelt on, because they were trapped in the car and couldn't get out, because the car caught on fire. They died because of the seatbelt. And there are people who have lived because of a seatbelt.
yeah, yeah,
So, and you can look at all the statistics, everything. Well, it seems to be that this would be safer. Well, it would seem to be that you'd be better off if you didn't swim in the ocean,
yeah.
because then there's no, unless it's a land shark that's coming to eat you.
Right.
But just, I think that these are also times where we need to have more conversations where we're willing to truth tell in that way. And even if
Yeah,
people don't want to hear it, and even if people get offended or ruffled about it, we need to be able to speak truthfully. I mean, I'm in an area of the United States where there are a large number of people who choose uh, vegetarianism as a way of eating, or a lot of people that choose being vegan, and then they make it very spiritual, that they're more spiritual because they don't kill things. But then there's that place where I will say, I'm from my ancestors are from the north. We're people up above the Arctic Circle in Sweden. We could not have lived if we didn't eat meat. And
true.
most people who choose in this climate choose even to be a vegetarian. You couldn't survive unless you had all that stuff flown in on a jet plane. How many things do you eat every day that do not grow in your area? The bananas, the pineapples, the mangoes, all the stuff that everybody has in the grocery store that makes vegetarianism possible in a colder climate comes at the cost of jet fuel, transportation, cold storage, you know, poorly paid farm workers, all of that.
Yeah,
So if you choose it as a way of life, and because you feel better, then that's your choice, but it doesn't make it a better choice because you also have to look at the price you pay to have that luxury. And
yeah,
that if I'm in the north and I kill a reindeer and I eat the reindeer and I utilize all the reindeer's body, that is not less spiritual. It is wise.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's relative to the circumstance of where you live. And if you can't say things like that, we've all been kind of shut down and shut up of like, well, say it. And that's also about not being invisible as an elder. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
I ask questions. You thought about that? You
yeah.
thought about how you could live as a vegan in this climate if you didn't have the luxury of this stuff? How many people
Right,
coconut?
right,
Things like coconut? It's like, where the heck do coconuts come from? I don't live in a place where they're growing coconuts or banana.
right,
Everything
right.
has either a banana or a coconut in it.
Yeah, yeah,
So I start right up front when I teach, I say to people like, here, just so we're clear, you can leave now if you want. You can stay. I'm old. I'm opinionated. I'm judgmental. I'll talk about things that are controversial. I
hmm.
drink whiskey. Once in a while, I smoke. And if you steal my horse, I'll probably shoot you.
I mean, but that
But
makes
then,
sense
then
to me.
you know that if you're gonna sit in the audience and listen, I've got it all laid out already. Just be ready to be upset. Just be, just be ready. And if you're not, you weren't listening. And And I think that that's refreshing too, that
Yeah.
in that place of it's not about pretty. I'm not, I'm not trying to make everybody happy. And it doesn't mean that what I have to say is the truth. It just means I'm willing to have a place in life that allows me to be, in other countries, I might be killed if I said some of the things that I say.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Um, yeah.
I love talking to you or talking at you or whatever. It's like I have a lot of opinions. Anyway, are we out of time? Do we need to keep going?
Um, yeah, I'm gonna wrap up
Okay.
in a minute, but I so I had a conversation with my daughter the other day, one of my daughters, and she said in response to, I asked her a question about, do I come off as like offensive? Do you like, am I, because I had a conversation with my ex-husband, and at the time, he was going through some things, and so he's being a little bitchy, and I was like, do I come off this way to you? And she was like, well, you will tell people about themselves, but but you never do it in a way where you're like insulting. Like you don't call people names, you're not insulting them, but you will tell them about themselves.
Yeah,
And I was like, well, thank you.
it's
I
great.
will, but I also I try to be conscious of how I talk to people and make sure even like whether it's my little kid or my older kid or whatever, as we know, those of us with more than one kid, you parent each child differently.
Yeah.
You can talk to one child in a certain way that they'll get it and the other one will shrug it off and vice versa. And so I know how to talk to my older kids in ways about certain things to where a different child I could be like, go do that now. And that's
Mhm.
just that. With my older kids, hey, if you could go blah blah blah. Now
Yeah.
also with my younger kid, I might be a little more explanatory as to hey, when you do this, this is why it's unacceptable, or, this is why we should do this on a regular basis. As to say a 25-year-old, I don't need to explain that to you because I've already explained it to you. I've already taught you and whatever. So even in that situation, hey, go do that. You know what I mean? Like, but I try to be when I'm talking to people, and even if we have a difference in opinion, most people, and I haven't met anybody yet that I can't have a conversation with, even if we don't agree on something. Um, there's one person I refuse to have like debates with because they
Mhm.
just they're not receptive. Like they're not open to having conversation in a healthy manner, even when they don't agree. And for that reason, because their communication, I won't have those conversations with them by my choice. But most people, because I understand that we don't have to have the same opinion on something.
Yeah.
For my opinion to be valid and your opinion to be valid, because we have different perspectives, we have different life experiences and things as to why my opinion was formed. There's an episode of Will and Grace that uh, Karen goes into this shop and she wants a cake made and she wants the cake to say MAGA. And the bakery owner refuses to make the cake. And so she brings Grace back in with her, and Grace is like, look, I don't really want this MAGA cake made either, but if we're going to honor freedom of speech, then we have to honor both sides of freedom of speech. And that that episode just really stood out to me because it's so true. In a unless it's like a conversation where we're like supporting pedophilia or something crazy like
Yeah.
that. But most conversations, we should be able to say, hey, you know what? I agree to disagree, and that's fine.
Mhm.
Um, but I do agree with that sentiment that if I have free speech on my opinion, then so should the next person. And that's even if they disagree with my opinion. Because if we really break it down, our opinions are formed from things that we have lived, seen, heard. Most people don't, most adults don't just have an opinion just to be a jerk to have the opinion. Like our
Yeah.
opinions come from things we've seen, heard, and experienced. And so that was I was like, oh man, you know what? I gotta agree. I So the episode ended, the bakery owner, she made the cake. And, and then when Karen came to pick it up, Karen picks it up to look at it, and the bakery owner smashed her face into it. And she was like, I still got my point across. And and then Grace was kind of like, yeah, but now you got to make that cake again because like you were wrong.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like this little tit for tat thing. But I was like, that's so true though. I mean, and unless it's something that is physically or psychologically harmful, you know, um, then you just,
Right. And there has to be room and space on both sides. It's like I'm a
yeah,
vegetarian, I work as a waitress. I'm not going to serve you bacon and eggs
right.
even though it's on the menu and you're here spending your money, but I'm not going to serve you bacon and eggs because I'm a vegetarian. I mean, that's like, okay, that
Right.
doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Then
that,
so have it's always about navigating each situation and
yeah.
saying, where have I crossed the line for myself? But the line for me doesn't mean that it has to be the line for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. But that could be applied to a lot of scenarios.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, I agree. And that place of like, um, sometimes, you get into these situations and I say, well, how's that working for you? That's maybe offensive, but it's also like a reality check. It's like, oh, it doesn't seem to be going too smoothly.
No, but it's true because that's something that I have to look at 40. I'm looking at certain things and I'm like, this hasn't really been successful, specifically when it comes to parenting or running a
Yes.
business. Like, okay, how is it working for me? Because it doesn't seem to be working well. So
Mhm.
even in the situation where I feel I am so in the right, if it's not getting me results, I have to be the one to control the
Yes.
situation. And that means I have to control my approach, even if I feel like I'm the one in the right.
Right. And that place about being right is also about being able to correct course. And
Yeah, yeah.
and and again, I'm plugging my Women of the Always book coming out this month. But there's a
Mhm.
chapter in there that I address that I ask the question, what's half of 13? So
Mm.
I use that in a creativity class, and you get a lot of different answers. It's like 6.5 or 6.5. And then I say, well, it's also, you could say half of 13 is 1 and 3. Because I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
specifically say to you how, what I meant. If you
Yeah,
divide it
like
down the
13 divided
middle,
by 2.
one,
Yeah.
yeah, well, no, but it's like a one. Here's a number one, draw a line. Here's a number three. So it's 1 and 3.
Yeah. That's a
Or
really, yeah.
if you were spelling the word, because I didn't say it was numbers, I said what's half of 13. So
Oh,
it's actually THIR, that's 4 letters, and TEEN is 4 more letters. So I could say half of 13 is 4 and 4. Four
yeah,
letters, 4 letters. So you're taking something very simple like this one little question, and it has a lot of ways to be answered, and they're all right.
right,
It depends on the perspective of the person, or where is this a mathematical problem? Is this a spelling question? Is this division? It's really interesting kind of to explore when, like you said, I feel that I'm really right, but it isn't working. So perhaps I need to look at the question again, the question of what's happening, and look at it in a different way, because maybe the answer in this case isn't 6.5, maybe it's 4 plus 4, because it's
Yeah.
a spelling problem, not a math problem. And then that opens up. It's like religion. If most people, for most people, their religion is an accident of their birth.
Yeah.
You're a certain religion because you were born into a certain family, or you were born into a community, or you were born in a certain state or a country. If you'd been born to Muslim parents in a Muslim country, more than likely you'd be a Muslim, and that's what you know. And whether I agree with that religion or you like that religion, it's an accident of the birth of where that person was born, and they have to make a choice as an adult whether that is in alignment with who they are or it's not. And it's the same with Christianity. It would be the same with Hinduism. And we
That's so
forget
true.
that, because
Yeah.
if you're a practicing Christian and that's something that you really believe in your heart and you live by those principles and have those values, but that opportunity to have all of that came from where you were born and how you were raised and what you've actively chosen to continue to believe.
That's so true. Absolutely true. And we could even have a whole nother conversation on
Yes,
that
we can.
topic.
Right, right.
But it's one thing, like it's easy to forget or not see when it comes to respecting other people's opinions because we're so like center focused to where we know how we grew up, the life experiences we had, things we've seen around us, the traumas we've experienced or
Mhm.
not, the religious aspect and all these things. But so simply easy to forget that someone in a different country has none of that that
Right,
you had.
right.
And it your environment develops a large portion of who you are. And you can't fault someone because they didn't grow up with the experiences that you did, with the teachings that you did, and vice versa. So that's a really important thing to point out too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's also a place that we can hold as we get older, to be really sure moment by moment that are you doing that or living that or believing that because it's somebody else's idea of how it should be, or have you really chosen this for yourself?
Right,
Or are you
right.
just going along because that's all that you know? And
Yeah.
those are the reasons that I find questions are so important. And the questions need to disturb a little bit, so that you can sit with it, and you can become indignant or you can become righteous or all the things that people do. And it gives you an opportunity to just stop for a moment and say, well, yes, I really do believe that. I really do live from that place. Or no, I never thought about that. That was just how I was taught, but it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily align with my essence, my personality, my spiritual path. If people want to know about me and my work, you can go to my website. It's my name, ingridkincaid.com. I have a new book coming out. I have a couple of other books. I do teaching, consulting classes. I love being alive. I love being old, and I hate being old. And thank you for taking the time to interview me again. I really enjoy talking with you.
Absolutely. I love having you on. It's so much fun and so informative. And I really appreciate the time that we have together. And I'm looking forward to having you back because we
Okay.
have many more things to talk about. And
Yes. Okay. I will say goodbye and then reach out to me if there's something, if you want to have another session or whatever. Interview. Like I said before, I love to talk, I love to share, and I think it's important for us to have, it doesn't
yeah,
always have to be controversial. That's the other thing. So many
right.
times we listen to these things, and maybe what I said was controversial. Maybe it was. Not about like positional, just be
Yeah,
openness, and especially raising children, raising grandchildren, living in different parts of the world. It's just so, the world is so amazing and so
Yeah,
beautiful. And there's so much out there that, there's terrible things that's happening, but they're not happening all the time in every place because there's just so much other life that we can enjoy and bring that joy into the lives of the people that we come in contact with.
absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, enjoy the rest of
All
your
right.
day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Check us out on YouTube at Rhea Higgs, ReahHagues. You can also keep up with us on Instagram at Just the Who Podcast.